ASMR Retro Forever. Hey guys, welcome to another ASMR Retro. Today I'm going to talk about this graphic novel, Thanos, the Infinity Siblings. I got this from my library a while back, actually just before the lockdown started. So I've been able to, because my library closed, I've been able to hang on to it for all this time. And I've been kind of putting it off doing this video because this is probably the most complicated comic book I've ever read. In terms of, well, basically there's a lot of time travel going on and it just gets really confusing. So I'm still not sure I understand it completely. But we'll try our best to go through this and see what we can do. And so basically on the cover you can see Thanos, and that's his brother Eros. Thanos and Eros, broskies. I see no resemblance whatsoever, but okay, let's start the insanity. I probably won't go into so much detail as I have in the past with this one, but let's see how it goes. So the story starts in the future, in the year 2127, on a planet called Zelgia. Zelgia. I'm sure that's not how you pronounce it. I don't care. That's how I'm pronouncing it, Zelgia. So this planet is inhabited by three dominant species. One of them is this owl-type creature. The other species is this ape-like creature, and then you have these insect-like guys. And these guys are all in a war, constantly in a war with each other because they don't like each other and they're fighting for domination of their planet. But in this instance, they're working together to fight Thanos and his army. And this part of the story is being narrated by Eros. And he's just basically saying how he had to manipulate everybody to achieve his goal. And we'll learn more about that. So here you can see the big battle scene breaks out. There's Thanos and both sides just destroying each other. And this skinny guy looks like a skinny Venom a little bit, if you ask me. But so then the battle rages on, lots of death, and then somebody teleports behind Thanos. And it's this guy here, one of the owl guys, and his name is Ghost. Ghost, he has the ability to teleport, which not all of them do. Somehow he developed this ability. So he manages to hit Thanos over the face with his weapon, and you can see it crack into a whole bunch of pieces. And so then Thanos tries to blast him, but he teleports behind him. Ghost tries to stab him with his little knife, but the knife snaps. And again, Thanos tries to blast him, but Ghost's teleporting is way too quick. And then all of a sudden they just kind of stop, stare at each other. Ghost looks at the sun. Well, not our sun, but the sun of that solar system. And then he disappears again, appears behind Thanos, grabs onto him, and they both teleport. And people are like, oh, where'd they go? And then they see the sun starts to flare up. So basically what happened was Ghost teleported himself and Thanos into the sun. So he sacrificed himself. Apparently that's what it appears like. So Thanos' soldiers are, his army are kind of like, I guess, distraught or whatever. I don't know if that's the right word, but, and then so the inhabitants of the planet get the upper hand, I guess, and the army retreats, Thanos' army, and they go in their space pods and take off. So now later in the day, the people of Zelgia are kind of celebrating their victory. It's like we did the unthinkable, we defeated Thanos and his army, and it came at a price of Ghost and his his alien friend, but let us remain united. So this was kind of like a uniting victory for the three species of the planet. And you can see a mysterious hooded figure here listening in. And just to, I'll just tell you who it is now. It's Eros. But you'll see more about that. And so he's like, those are, those stirring words are meaningless to me. He just wanted to make sure that his goal was achieved. So then he walks through this portal and disappears. So we'll see what that's all about later. So now we're in the present time. So remember, this was 2127, I believe. Now we're in the present, and where the location is the domain of Mistress Death. And here you see Thanos just chilling on his throne there, and there's Death beside him. And basically, Thanos is saying he has everything he's ever wanted, anything he has desired, he's achieved, but he still is not satisfied. He's not content with his life. He's feeling kind of depressed, kind of down. He didn't say in those words, but and then he even, and this surprised me, even said that he even got he won the love and affection of Mistress Death, which I remember in the Infinity comics, that's what his goal was, to win her over. But I didn't think it would ever happen, but now it actually did happen, and yet he's still not content. So then he decides, I know what will snap me out of this funk. I'm gonna go fight a worthy foe, maybe start a war somewhere, I don't know, and that'll distract me and, give me a purpose again. So he leaves. Now with some motivation. So this is on Titan, which is one of Saturn's moons, and that's where Thanos is from originally. And that's his brother Eros, just relaxing in his bed. And he has multiple partners, as you can see, not judging to each their own. Looks like they had a nice night of Netflix and chill. And my blanket's a little bit riding a bit low in this shot, but whatever. So the narrator is just talking about how Eros has no moral compass really. He's a sociopath, basically, and he doesn't really empathize with anybody. He just does, it's all about his own gratification. And it's also interesting because it mentions that in the past, anytime he did something good, it was usually because his father, that's what his father told him to do, or that's what the Avengers told him he had to do, and so he just did it. But now he's on his own because his father's died, and I guess he's not working with the Avengers now, so he really has no moral compass to, lead him in one way or another. So anyway, he goes outside, and you can see Titan is all destroyed. I don't know the history about that, but I'm sure that Thanos had something to do with it. And then suddenly, some time portal opens up behind him, and Eros gets sucked into this portal. I was like, wow, what's going on? And then so this is his portal he got sucked into, but then another portal opens up, and two figures walk out. Now, I'll just spoil it now. This is Eros, future Eros, 2,000 years in the future, I believe, or I don't know if that's accurate. I'll say he's 2,000 years older. That's more accurate. 2,000 years older than the present Eros and Kang. So before I get to that, so just to give you some context and explain a few things now, or else it'll be really confusing. So the Eros from this time portal, the 2,000 year, I'll call them the older Eros, and this one the young Eros. The old Eros came here to accomplish some goal, some plan. We'll find out about that later, but he didn't want to run into his younger self because that can cause a time paradox. So he sent his younger self thousands of light years away because he knows it'll take him 2,000 years to get back to this point. That's where things start to get complicated. So he arrives here in the present day, 2,000 years older than he was when he left. And Kang is, I don't know much about him, but apparently he's from about the year 4200, and he is trying to secure his power by changing changing events in the past so that to make sure things go his own way or something like that. And he's had a lot of run-ins with Thanos and the Avengers. But now, for whatever reason, he's working with Eros. And then, then Eros goes into another portal. He has to go to Starlin's bar on Nowhere because he has to talk to Pip for some reason. So now this is the young Eros. He's like, where am I? So this was the other side of, this is where he got sent to. And some weird prehistoric looking planet. But he doesn't know where it is. And the comic never mentions where it is. It's not really that important. And he sees a dinosaur. The dinosaur swallows him. He busts out, punches right through its teeth. And, what's he saying here? Yeah, so now we get into the present once again. In deep space. Technically, this is also the present, but it's just another place. And this is Thanos' ship. And they tell one of his dudes, his henchman, tells him that there was a temporal disruption on Titan. He's like, that's weird. Okay, I better investigate this. So now we're at Starlin's bar, and there's Pip, and Eros shows up. And at first, Pip doesn't recognize him because he's 2,000 years older after all. And he's like, oh, it's you. You look different. Sit down. Let's talk. So now we go into the year 4657 AD. We're in deep space, and that's Kang's ship. So Kang notices that there's this growing darkness in space. It's kind of like dark energy, and he doesn't know what it is. And he's like, I have to investigate this. This can threaten my power, Okay, now we go back to Titan. And there's Eros and Pip. I guess they came out of a bar or whatever. And Thanos appears. Yeah, because he said he was going to go to Titan to investigate the time disruption, or temporal disruption, whatever they called it. And he's like, Pip, I didn't expect to find you here, but he wonders who this dude is in the cloak. It's like, you look kind of familiar, but you can't be Eros. And then he reveals that he is Eros. This is the old Eros, of course. And he's like, you're old. Well, he doesn't say you're old, but he recognizes that he's different. But the only difference that we can see as the reader is that his hair is a little bit gray on the side. His face does look a bit older, but it's kind of hard to tell that he looks older. That adds to the confusion, I think. So then we jump to 2079, and this is the young Eros. A certain amount of time has passed. As you can see, he built himself a hut. He has a long beard and hair and stuff like that, and he's built himself some kind of radio, what do you call that thing? Satellite device thingy. Satellite dish. And this ship appears, and he's like, oh, thank the stars. Now, I don't know if he used this technology to control the ship to come get him, or this is just, I don't know, they didn't really explain. I guess, I don't know, they didn't explain how that ship got there. I guess that was one of his ships that he, gave his signal to come get him or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, so he found a way to get off that planet. That's the important thing you gotta know. So now we're back at the present. And Thanos is like, you've changed, brother. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm 2,000 years older since we've last met. And then they talk about how their father's dead. Their father was killed by Ultron, and Thanos was like, yeah, I'll take care of them eventually, don't worry about it. And then, okay, so now we jump back to 2125 AD. It's an easier way to say it. So if you remember, this is 2 years before that war in the beginning of the book takes place. That war between Thanos and the people of the planet. So you can see this ship landing. This is Eros Eros' ship, young Eros' ship. It crash landed on this planet. So he's like, oh man, I'll never get home at this rate. And he's like, I would normally avoid this kind of planet because it's a huge planet and has strong gravitational force, and that kind of weakens him. He doesn't have the same strength, and he, as you'll see, doesn't have the ability to fly. So, anyways, this ape creature jumps him and just knocks him out cold. And then he wakes up and he's strung upside down, and the monsters look like they're getting ready to eat him. Well, not monsters, they're intelligent beast creatures. So this part's hard to tell what's going on because it's upside down, but basically Ghost teleports in and kills the apes and rescues Eros. And at first they don't understand each other, but Eros uses his bracelet. It's like a universal communicator device, so they can understand each other. And then Ghost explains about the 3 different species and how they're at war and stuff like that. And so he follows Ghost, and then he takes him to his village a couple of hours later. And he explains, he's like, so you guys are at constant war with each other? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, I have a proposition for you. So he's already starting to wheel and deal. So then he says, yo, if you get me the raw materials to repair my ship, I will turn your people into the dominant species on this planet. So he's going to help them defeat the apes and the lizards in exchange for helping them repair a ship. So now we go to the present on Titan, and there's old Eros talking to Thanos, and let's see. So he starts telling him about, his journey and what happened, and he says, "Do you know of Kang the Conqueror?" And yeah, Thanos is like, "Yeah, I know. We're not exactly friends. Not exactly broskies." So he's explaining that he met Eros met Kang, and Kang at this point already had secured his place in the future, secured his power in his own present future time in 4,200, whatever it is. But he was concerned about threats from the past that might mess up his future, kind of thing. And then he discovered this, talking about this black mass thing that's growing in the universe, and he was afraid to. Kang was afraid to investigate it, like to go inside it and see what it was. So he sent in drones to see what was going on in there, and he saw this big battle taking place with this huge creature here, some kind of cosmic creature, and all these little creatures below. And then he said Kang didn't realize it at first, but then he recognized that this guy here is actually Thanos, future version of Thanos, where he's like extremely powerful, godlike. And then he says, Kang says that those dark creatures, those little dark creatures ended up defeating and killing Thanos. And Thanos is like, wow, I'm surprised I'm still around then. And he's like, so that's how I'm gonna end up dying. And Eros says, possibly, but it doesn't have to be that way. Kang says we can prevent that from happening. Which is weird, because why is Kang want to help him? Well, they do explain it later. Let's see. So basically this is showing that Kang went to go explore the origins of this black thing that's growing in the universe. So he traced it backwards through time, and which led him to, like, he watched it absorb a planet, and it just, out of the shadows, it would kill people. And it only took 24 hours to basically wipe out the entire civilization of that particular planet and completely engulf it with darkness. So he backtracked him more, and he traced the origins of this black mass, growing black mass, to Celtia, of course. And somehow he connected that mysterious black energy, or whatever it is, to the fact that one of the inhabitants of the planet learned how to teleport. I'm not sure what the connection is there, but he figures if he wipes this guy out, then that'll be it. It'll stop this thing from happening. So he kills him, but it still didn't stop the black mass from growing. I'll just call it black mass. That's not what it's called, but that didn't stop the black mass from growing in the future because other people on the planet developed the ability to teleport too. So he, killed a whole bunch of them, but that still didn't prevent it from happening. So then he decided to explore the black mass in the present time, and while he was getting a little bit too close, it started to, I guess, attack his ship, for lack of a better word. Got a little bit too close. So in a panic, he tells his ship to get him out of there. And what happened? So basically, it sent him to a barren planet because it didn't specify a location or something. It sent him to this barren, unnamed planet about 2,000 years from the present. But it just so happened that Eros was on that planet. This was young Eros. He's a little bit older now, but the Eros that got sent back in time, he eventually landed on this planet to do some repairs to the ship or something like that. And then, so it's just a sort of a chance encounter that they got to meet each other. And so Thanos says, so Kang was able to send you back to this time period. And he says yes, after some negotiating, he returns after his 2,000-year exile. And he explains, Thanos is like, wouldn't that create a time paradox if you meet your younger self? And he's like, no, that's why I sent my younger self far away. That I knew it would take him 10,000 years to get back here, blah, blah, blah. And then Thanos was kind of like, okay, why do you want to help me prevent my own future death? And then he's like, what do you want? And he's like, let's talk about genocide. And look how happy his face is. That's kind of creepy. So, now it jumps to 2126 AD, again on the planet Zelchia, which is 1 year before the war that happens at the beginning of the book. And at this point, young Eros has, I guess, armed them with weapons, the owl people with weapons. And they've kind of got an upper hand against the other dominant species. So he fulfilled his end of the promise. They helped him repair his ship. And then he leaves. So now we're back on Titan, and Eros and Thanos have discussed a plan to how to prevent this big, complicated plan, but they didn't explain it yet. We learn more about that later. So now Thanos leaves, and then so Pip is like, man, this plan is kind of crazy, and then he gives them, Eros gives him this bracelet which allows him to time travel. So now now we're in the year 3812 AD, and young Eros is in this. Obviously we've missed a lot of the history of what was going on all these years, but he's on this planet, Shankara, and he's on a rooftop, and one guy says, all this death and destruction just so you could acquire a new spaceship. And Eros says, one with advanced interstellar capabilities. I've still far to go before I can rest. So he's still trying to get back to his time and place. Not to his time, but back to his planet. And so it looks like this guy was some kind of master, and Eros trained with him. And this master guy is like, this is my reward for spending all those years teaching you the way. So he taught him the way, whatever that means. And Eros is like, yeah, and thanks to you, my powers of persuasion have vastly improved. And so basically, somehow, his actions there led to this war and this destruction on this planet that destroyed everything. And the master guy can't live with that. And he's like, this I cannot live with. And he just walks off this building. Basically jumps off the building, killing himself. And Eros is like, oh well. And there he goes, takes off with his ship. This shiny new interstellar capable ship. 4012 AD, 4012 AD, a nameless planet. So this was the planet that Kang crash landed on. And like I said, he just by fluke met Eros. And he's like, "You're Eros, Thanos' brother." But at the same time, we see that old Eros appears with Pip from, he time traveled from the present. And Pip's like, "Hey, is that you over there?" And he's like, "Shut up." And then, so Kang is afraid of Eros. And he's like, "You wouldn't shoot me because I can help you. I know your ship is damaged, so I have the parts in my ship to repair your ship." So they start walking towards his ship, and this gives old Eros a chance to go into Kang's damaged ship. So they go on there, and there's something I don't understand. They end up stealing some time travel technology from Kang's ship, but they already have that because he gave Pip some time traveling bracelet thing, so maybe it's a different kind of time traveling technology. I don't know. I didn't quite understand that, but so now they teleport somewhere. So now we go back to 2126 AD on planet Celgia, and there's young Eros taking off after helping them. But then old Eros appears. He's like, "I'm back." That reminds me of Back to the Future too at the end. But and it's like, "What? How did you get back here?" And you've changed. You look old. You look like a boomer now. And he's like, "Don't worry about that now. But I left prematurely. But let me make it up to you by giving you these weapons." So he gives him all these highly advanced weapons. This is part of his plan, master plan with Thanos, which we'll learn about. So 1 year later, so this is a year later, they have all these advanced weapons. They kind of dominated, and now they're sort of negotiating with the apes and the lizard dudes to work together and to unite themselves. Okay. And he says that we need them united because they'll be easier to manipulate. So it's all part of Eros' plan. And he explains here the reason why he's helping Thanos prevent his future self from dying, which is, he says, basically, if I achieve that goal, then Thanos will, maybe he'll spare my life and you'll just leave me alone, So a few miles away, this guy here is mourning the loss of a few people, and someone says they did not deserve to die, and he's like, "Who said that?" And it's this little dude, Hunger. So that's actually the source of the black mass that's growing. It's this character named Hunger. And then back, this is 2127 AD, so this is when that war starts. This is in outer space, and this is Thanos' army. So they arrive, and this is future. This is Thanos of this time, 2127. So that's why he looks different. He's got these lines, glowing lines on his outfit there. So now we're back on the planet's surface, and Hunger basically absorbs this person, kind of like Venom, and he completely absorbs him. And he says Hunger has returned. So we'll definitely learn more about that. So then Thanos is like, "Let the killing begin." Start blasting these helpless people. Well, they're not helpless, but. And this part's also confusing. It just says elsewhere. So what does that mean? Is it when and where is this? More importantly, when is this? That's what I find confusing. But so Thanos is like, "Where am I?" And then somebody starts talking to him, blah blah blah. He's like, "Listen carefully. This is important to your future." And he says, "Your plan with Eros is going to go a little bit differently." So Thanos was supposed to show up at Celgia with a small army, but he's like, "No, bring a big army instead." For what reason, I don't know. And then Ghost. So this is what happens. Or not Ghost. What's his name? Hunger. He starts absorbing all the people of Zelgia, and then his power grows stronger. So it explains that typically he'll absorb everything in a particular universe, and then transport himself to another dimension. So when he used these are the Infinity Stones to transport himself to Earth, not to Earth, but to our dimension. But he needed to use a powerful being, like it uses a lot of energy, so he used Galactus. I guess he took control of him or something like that. I don't understand all the details, but then I guess this happened in previous issues. But Thanos stopped Galactus in this situation, and he dropped an entire planet on him, and it almost destroyed him, and it left Hunger very, very weak, and he wasn't able to absorb anything anymore. So he was just kind of, stuck there without the ability to absorb anything. There's Silver Surfer, but he couldn't absorb him. So he, searched far and wide for somebody to absorb, and he was never able to successfully do it until he arrived on Zelgia, and for whatever reason, he was able to finally absorb these people. Maybe the fact that they can teleport, I don't know. So that's why the growth of this black mass, which is Hunger, originated from this planet. And let's see. So now this is when he defeats, I guess after he defeats Thanos, and says, "How can one stand against the god who possesses the raw might of reality itself? It cannot be done. Hunger triumphs." And then, so now whoever's talking to Thanos on this part is saying, "Just do what I told you to do, and we can stop that from happening." So now this is 2127. Back on Zelgia, the war is about to commence on the surface. And then Thanos is waiting, and then Eros appears. And then he's like, because Thanos is waiting for him to appear. And he's like, "Thanos, this is not what we agreed. You were to bring a small arm of the force." And he says, "Circumstances change." And then crack. Looks like he just snaps his neck or something like that, so it doesn't look very alive there. And then he tosses him aside. And then he goes for Bib, but Bib disappears. And then he says, "Everyone dies." That's a really cool drawing of Thanos. So then you get this huge battle. So this is the same battle, essentially, from the first page there, the first couple of pages. And then the same thing happens. Ghost smashes his sword over Thanos. He grabs onto Thanos, and they teleport into the sun, supposedly. And then his army ends up retreating, and they take off, just as planned. And they assume he's dead. So now we go back to elsewhere with this mysterious figure talking to Thanos, and that's not important right now. Oh yeah, well, this is what he's telling him. He's like, okay, 21, 27, 80. So shortly after, they thought they defeated Thanos and his army. They let their guard down, and at that point, that's when Hunger starts absorbing more people, and they start taking over. But this time, Thanos will be ready for him, because he's not really dead. They just faked the whole thing, and that was part of the plan. And it's like, "Thanos, but I saw you die." And he grabs him and just, I guess, starts squeezing him or something. So Hunger tries to absorb him. That's cool. But Thanos is just too powerful, and he just squeezes the crap out of him, and he just be gone. It just evaporates, essentially. It's a powerful grip. So I guess that was the plan to save Thanos' future self, was to make Hunger think that Thanos was dead, and then he would reveal himself so that Thanos could then kill him, something like that. I don't, it's really, I don't know. I'll just keep going. So Ghost comes out. So Ghost of became like a martyr, and people sort of used that as a uniting force for them. But if he goes back, then maybe that they won't stay together and start fighting each other, something like that. But so Ghost decides, you know what, I better leave this planet, or else I don't want to, put that in danger, that stability in danger. So he ends up going with Thanos to the portal, and he meets up with Eros. This would be old Eros and Pip, so they're all in on the plan. Although, yeah, they're all in on the plan. Nobody actually died. They just made it seem that way for some reason. And then, okay, nothing too important there. I'm sure there is, but so then they go back to the present. But as soon as they leave, Thanos is there, and another portal opens up, and Kang arrives. And Kang was kind of surprised that Thanos was expecting him. So very briefly, Kang just says that he'll form an alliance with Thanos and help him because he has time travel technology or whatever. He'll be his temporal advisor, and in exchange that Thanos leaves him alone because Thanos is a big threat to him, something along those lines. And they agree upon that. And then Kang says, "It shall be as you desire, Thanos." And Thanos says, "Lord Thanos." And Kang repeats that. And Thanos is happy. He's like, respect where respect is due. And you see a smile appear on his face, and he just breaks out laughing. I guess he's, I don't know, mad with power. I don't know. And then, so now we're back to the present with the present Thanos. And Eros reappears, and he's kind of mad at Thanos. He's like, why didn't you follow the plans like they were supposed to? And he's like, I have my reasons, you have your secrets, I have mine, blah blah blah. So now this is Eros in Starlin's bar with Ghost, and you can see the Guardians of the Galaxy characters around the table, just telling stories and whatnot. And then, let's see. So we're back at elsewhere, and we find out that the guy telling Thanos those things was himself, his future self, his much more powerful future self. And basically, he says, in order to secure his power in the future, he wants to use Thanos kind of like a puppet, or like he wants to use the younger Thanos to make sure everything goes as it should go in the past, to make sure that his power in the future is secure, something like that. And he wants, Thanos is like, how did you get so powerful? Like, and then doesn't really say. Basically, we learn that eventually Thanos will betray Mistress Death, and he actually becomes Death himself. He gets the powers of Death, he takes it away from her. And, the present Thanos is kind of shocked. He's like, wow, but I would never do that, and he feels like he's losing, and she's like, not too happy about it there, as you can see. And he kind of feels like he's losing his, what do you call that, not willpower, free will. He's losing his free will because his future self knows what's going to happen. He already knows what he's going to do, and he has no choice but to do it. Although that doesn't really make sense, because if you know your action, you can take another action. Like, he doesn't have to betray Mistress Death because he knows he's going to do that. Alright, so I'm going over this very quickly because it's very detailed and very complicated, but that's kind of the gist of it. But Thanos is not happy at all about the fact that he's essentially being controlled by his future self. He's kind of like his own puppet kind of thing. And he's not determining his own actions in a sense. So, and here's the bottom line. As you can see how distraught Thanos is about this whole situation, how angry he is, and just busts through this little thing here. And that's the end. That's how it ends there. There's a little epilogue scene where Eros, I guess that's a ship or something earlier, a short distance away, and I guess that's the ship's computer, and he asks the ship to, duplicate the time traveling technology into a bracelet, and he thinks he might need it one day against his brother. And that is roughly. I know a lot of that didn't make sense. Maybe I didn't explain it very well, but it is a very complicated book, and I didn't want this to drag on too long. But overall, I enjoyed it to a certain degree. It was a little bit too complicated for me with all the time travel. Like, usually I have no problem understanding time travel stuff, but this was like a little bit too much. But still, there was some joy that I got out of it. But I would recommend this if you do like a challenge and you want to think and you like to read your comics more than once, the same issue, the same book, because you'll definitely have to read it more than once to fully grasp everything, if even that's possible. In terms of the artwork, not really my style of artwork, but I can live with it. So yeah, that is Thanos: The Infinity Siblings. I hope you enjoyed my rambling and my attempt at explaining a very, very, very complex storyline. And I hope you found it relaxing. And take care of yourselves. And